So welcome everyone to the webinar, Charting Your Academic Publishing Career panel discussion. We're all really excited to be here today to talk with you and our 5 wonderful panelists and hear their insights on their career development. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll save a few minutes at the end to kind of go through the questions and answer them. And to get us started, I guess I'll introduce myself and then pass it over to the panelists so they can introduce themselves. I'm Laura Bolt. I lead our webinars, TFG, for the Early Career Professionals Committee through STM. I work for Wiley as a senior managing editor, and I've been with Wiley for about 7 years, so I'm still a little bit early career. And I'm excited to be here. This is the first webinar I've put on as the leader of our webinars TFG, so this is a big accomplishment, and I'm excited to be leading this. And I'll pass it over to Nicola.
Thanks, Laura. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you all about career progression with my fellow panelists. I'm Nicola Jones and I work for Springer Nature, where I lead their Sustainable Development Goals publishing programme, a role that I have been doing for the last 7-ish years. Do you want me to hand over to somebody or do you want to go to the next person?
Yeah, you can go ahead and hand it over, or yeah.
Okay, then I will hand over to Megan, who I can see at the top of the screen.
Thanks, Nicola, and thank you, Laura, for putting together this panel discussion. My name is Megan Ball, and I am a publisher for the Energy and Chemical Engineering Publishing programs here at Elsevier. Really pleased to be joining you all, and I'll hand it over to Colin.
Thanks, Megan. Good day, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but that feels more appropriate. Happy to see you all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Colin Trumbull. I'm a Senior Manager of Strategic Account Management for Wiley Partner Solutions. But I started in my career at J&J Editorial as an editorial assistant, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about my own personal career progression and hopefully share some tips that might be helpful for you all looking to do that the same. Really happy to be here. And I'm going to throw it over to Marilyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marilyn Catisse with the IEEE. I support all of our author engagement activities. I've been at IEEE over 25 years. I'm in my current role about 8 years. I have a team of about 6 people with 2 direct reports. And I have spent a lot of time in a lot of different departments and moved around and up within the IEEE, working in sales and marketing, educational activities, corporate communications, sales and marketing, and where I am right now in their publishing operations. So I'm excited to be here with everyone. And with that, I'll turn it over to Christopher.
Hi, thanks. So my name's Chris England. I'm the Associate Publications Director for Ethics, Policy, and also Program Development at the American Physiological Society. I started out in the sciences, so I did my PhD in pharmacology toxicology. At that point, I went into a postdoc program in the Department of Medical Physics at UW-Madison. At that point, a position came open at the American Chemical Society. So I was there for several years before moving over to the APS. So I'm excited to be part of this. Thanks.
Thank you all. And we're really happy to have this great lineup of panelists today. So I think we'll just go ahead and kind of dive right into our questions. Let me just pull them up. Okay. So our first question, could you describe where you first started your career in academic publishing And what steps did you take to bridge from early to mid-career and beyond? And Nicola, I'll hand this one over to you to lead the question. And anyone else who wants to piggyback or jump in after Nicola, feel free to. Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. So being asked to participate in the webinar has given me the opportunity to kind of reflect on how my career developed, because it was quite shocking to me to realise that it's almost 20 years since I started in publishing as an editorial assistant working on material science journals at Elsevier. That was in October 2004 when I took up my first role in the Oxford office. And I had done an undergraduate degree in genetics and wanted a career where I would continue to be involved in science, but I wouldn't be doing it directly. And as somebody who's always been really interested in reading books, publications, the idea of science publishing sounded really exciting to me. Now, my degree was in genetics. I didn't really know very much about material science, but I saw that there were 2 jobs open at Elsevier, which was a name that I was very familiar with, for entry-level jobs. One was in the chemistry team, which was slightly closer to my expertise, but still a little bit out of it. And the other was in the material science team. And I was lucky enough to be interviewed for both positions. And I was also lucky enough to be offered both positions. And I had to make a choice. And the choice I made at the time was to go with the material science job. And the reason I made that choice was because I connected better with the people who interviewed me for that role. And they just, in the kind of hour that I had with them, they seemed like the people that I really wanted to work with. We just got on with each other really, really well. And that was when I discovered that people who work in publishing, by and large, are really lovely, and you will have amazing colleagues in this industry. But also getting on with people and finding people that you kind of gel with is actually quite important to career progression. From there, I moved into a role as a managing editor of the physics journals at Taylor & Francis. And again, this was taking me kind of further away from my expertise, but because of the good relationships I'd had with my manager and her manager at Elsevier, I'd been given increasing amounts of responsibility, and I felt more like I wanted to take on the challenge of managing a journals list all by myself at that point. And the opportunity came up at a competitor. So I moved to a competitor. From there, I moved up at TNF to take on the role of publisher of behavioural science, public health and social care journals. By this point, I had given up on the idea of ever working in genetics publishing. I basically still have given up on that idea. Life sciences is just never going to happen for me. But this was an opportunity that I took up as a maternity cover role. And again, it was like, I think I might be ready to do a new job, but I'm not really sure. A maternity cover felt like a sort of relatively low pressure way of trying that out, because, you know, if it had all gone disastrously wrong, then it would be like, okay, well, the person is back now. Thanks for your time. No harm, no foul. You can't mess anything up too badly in a year. And I would go back and I would find something else to do. What actually happened was that I loved the job. I loved working in social science publishing. I loved working particularly on psychology. And I started doing a master's degree in psychology in my spare time. And then when the person who was on maternity leave came back, she was promoted, and that meant I got to keep the job permanently, which was fantastic. A few years later, personal circumstances changed. I'd moved location and I was thinking about another job. And a role came up at Palgrave Macmillan for the books, to lead a new books list in psychology. And I was all in on psychology by this point. I had my master's degree. I'd been working in the publishing area. And this seemed like the perfect opportunity for me again. So I went along to this interview, and I left the interview going, well, I don't know anything about books publishing. And I've been working in the industry for about 10 years at this point, and I knew about journals publishing and I knew exactly how to do journals. But I didn't know anything about books publishing, but I did know about psychology, and I knew a lot of people in psychology. And I came out going, well, if they want somebody who knows about books publishing, I'm not the right candidate for that job. If they think they can teach somebody about how books publishing works and like how different can it be, then I would be a really good candidate for that job. And I was fortunate that that was the decision that they made. They said, she knows this subject area. We don't know this subject area particularly. That's why we want someone to do this, but we are experts in books publishing. And I think what was kind of common to this career path was the idea of looking for opportunities that came up when they were kind of fulfilling a need that I had. I wanted to take on more responsibility, or I wanted to try something out, or I wanted to move location for whatever reason, and also being really clear about what I could bring to it. So, you know, I understood journals publishing. And being open to what I didn't know. Didn't really, when I took on the publisher role in behavioural sciences, didn't really know very much about society publishing, but I had heard my colleagues talk about what it was like to work with societies. And I'd listened to my colleagues talk about what, you know, societies wanted in the area of thinking about things like journal acquisition or new launches or things like that that hadn't been so relevant to my previous role. And the same thing with books. I had been at conferences with books colleagues when I was working in journals, and I had listened to them talk to their authors, and we'd had conversations about how you set up a book series. And I think there's a lot of information that you can just kind of get from listening to people and talking to people. And so I think the way in which I kind of bridged my early career roles was through that kind of being aware of what other people were doing if it wasn't totally relevant to me, and also going for opportunities and being clear about what I was offering and what I wasn't offering. And then the same thing happened when my current role came up. This was something that I'd been doing kind of more and more at Palgrave Macmillan. I'd been interacting with people in different subject areas and across different parts of the company, and this role was created when Springer Nature was created as a way of kind of bringing different parts of the business together around a global mission. And because I had worked across different product types and across different subject areas and with lots of different people, I was able to say, well, this is my expertise. So I think being really clear about what is your expertise and what gaps in your expertise might be as well is really important. I will stop talking now and let somebody else have a turn.
Can I echo one thing? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just say real quick. So just to echo something that Nicola just said, I think it's so important. It's as you're in your early career opportunity, as you're getting used to things, finding things that excite you and finding things that you're passionate about. If there's a little side project that comes up that you can get something going on, I think that that's really central. I'm in a small publisher, and with that though, there's a lot of opportunities for me to grow. I mean, there's a tons of different projects that just open up at any given time, and I think that to get to that mid-career and to get even beyond your mid-career, it's really you're showing people that you have initiative and that you're willing to go beyond what you're comfortable with and kind of explore new areas and figure stuff out. I didn't know anything about books before I started working in books, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, I know this whole new realm. So I think I just wanted to echo what Nicola said because I think that's really important. Thanks.
Chris, I'm glad you went first, because I think that both your point and Nicola's point speak to something that really stands out to me, which is it's not only important to think about what you bring to the table, but I think it's important to think creatively about what you bring to the table. And I think a lot of shortcomings I see is people say, well, I have this explicit experience and I'm looking for a job that builds explicitly on that experience. But let's break down what those skills that you developed in that role are and how they apply to a new role. And you don't need to think quite as linearly as I think a lot of people think about their experience. You know, I'm in a role that helps me be forward facing and really, in front of a group of people. Okay, so what are the skills there that will apply to a higher level? Maybe it's the communication, maybe it's public speaking. But I think that is a really, really key thing. It's not only thinking about what do I bring to the table, but how do I draw the connections between my experience and what the next level is going to need for me? And I think that has certainly helped me as well, not only thinking about what I've accomplished, but how I'll use what I've accomplished to succeed in that next role as well.
Continuing on Colin's thought, I would just offer the feedback, if you will, that once you've identified what it is that you're really good at and what your skill set is, and once you've identified some positions or opportunities that interest you, use your network and seek mentors and really make your aspirations known to those who can help you grow.
I'll just jump in to say that really coming back to what Nicola said, being present and mindful and really appreciating all the side talk that happens. And then again, using your network to just be involved and show people the initiative that you have of caring about what you work on will really go a long way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all. I think that's something that can resonate with a lot of early career people. You'll meet those managers or mentors that you kind of click with and can really kind of bounce some of these ideas off of them and get a different perspective to help you start thinking in that way as you're wanting to move up in your career. I think that's really just the human, like getting to talk to other people in the field, getting to interact with your coworkers, kind of being curious and self-aware. All of those things are so valuable to figuring out what you want to do next and what skills you need to get there. Okay, let's move on to question 2. So what tools and resources did you utilize early in your career to advance your career progression? What tools and resources would you recommend for those who want to move forward in their careers within the industry? So I'm going to pass this over to Colin and Marilyn. Whichever one of you wants to go first, can go ahead.
I'll go. I unmuted, so please add on to it, Marilyn. But for me, I think there's sort of 2 schools of thought, and the primary thing that stood out to me, there's sort of technical tools that we use in our day-to-day, and then there's just general resources and things that may not really be technology. And I'm focusing, I think, my thoughts on the resources that aren't technologically based. And for me, the hugest and most impactful resource that I still take advantage of every single day are my colleagues around me. And I think especially in this industry that leans so heavily on that experiential knowledge and just going through the reps and understanding how this scenario plays out has made it really, really necessary that I lean on my colleagues who have been through those experiences before me, and being collaborative in that way. And, when that new challenge comes up, reaching out to someone who you think may have run into it before is probably one of the most valuable things I've done. And it also has the added benefit of you get to look really, really sharp and composed and really knowledgeable when you're totally stealing the experience of your colleagues, but you get to do that in response, and it not only builds your experience, but it also improves what you can do to support the people that you're working with and really get a better final product at the end of the day. And so there are a lot of technical tools as well that I think Marilyn might talk about a little bit, but I definitely feel like one of the most valuable resources I had that I used and continue to use are my teammates and my mentors and peers, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I do think that your network is a huge valuable tool that, you need to seed. But my biggest thing is almost like a Boy Scout motto of just always being prepared. And the tools that really help me do that are like calendars. I was a huge fan of the Palm Pilot when it came out before the iPhone, and was also a huge fan of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the whole Franklin Planner system. So I'm a real paper nerd in that. I love writing things down. I love taking time to reflect on what went well today. What did I learn? What did I not do the right way? And kind of like dissecting it to try and learn from it. And then I think that self-awareness that Laura mentioned before really helped me figure out what is the landscape, where am I going? And the simple act of writing it down in a book. And I mean, you could keep an electronic journal. There's so many different ways to do that, but I think it's very orienting and helped me stay mindful about what I was doing when I was coming to work and engaging with my colleagues.
I agree on all of the comments related to time management and keeping careful track of the goings on and your learnings. To piggyback off of the concept of being self-aware, it's really critical to know what your strengths are. And likewise, it's really critical that you're honest with yourself about areas where you need to develop. So just coming into this publisher role, having degrees in communication and journalism, didn't spend a lot of time in Excel. And that's a pretty critical tool for communicating in business. So just earlier this year, I took a few Coursera courses on Excel, and it's revolutionized the way that I can communicate in that format. So being open to feedback from your peers and your leaders who have been in the role and who might be able to point you to some skills that are critical for success is important. And then taking the initiative to fill in your knowledge gaps is critical.
And I think if I could add to this, something I started doing in my second job was maintaining an email folder with positive feedback that people had sent me. I think we can spend a lot of time, or I personally can spend a lot of time being very, very self-critical and thinking about everything that I've done wrong and ruminating on everything that has gone badly. But actually, just having a separate email folder, and this is advice that I've given to mentees over the years as well, where someone says, "Thank you so much for doing that, Nicola," or "You did a great job there," everything's collected together and you can go into it and you can have a little bit of an ego boost on a Friday afternoon when you don't feel very good. And what's even better is that when you come to write CVs and cover letters for your next job, you have evidence of the good things that you've done.
And I'll piggyback just one comment. I think in terms of my roles, a lot of it has been project management, and I think that that is essential for all of this. And I don't think anybody, well, I mean, I know that there are project managers out there. I don't think anybody needs that extensive training to be able to do this. But I think if you get the opportunity to take a couple of courses out there related to project management and how to have so many things that are going on at the same time and keeping things organized, I think it's really, it helps out a whole lot. And it did me in the beginning of my career. So I would recommend that to anyone. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Chris. I think, in my experience, I am often managing, several journals, and they all have different things they're doing, initiatives they're working on, and it can kind of get easy to become lost in the chaos of what's going on. So project management, I think, is definitely like a huge skill a lot of people could have. I think that gets back as well to Marilyn's point on being organized. Keeping up with what you're doing, being able to be self-reflective. But as Nicola mentioned, also saving a little bit of good thoughts for yourself so that when you're self-reflecting, you're not just getting caught up in what you did wrong or what you're worried about. You also have this little folder that you can look at and say, I've done this great, these things really well, and people acknowledge that. And also just like working within your community, working within your network, to find people who you can talk to, brainstorm with, again, like mentorship roles, things like that. There's there's a lot that a lot of different areas that I think all kind of work together to kind of build your strengths, build your confidence, and set you up for success. So, okay. Question 3. If you could give professionals one hard skill they must have for advocating for themselves professionally, what would it be? And I'm going to start this one with Colin and Marilyn.
I can go
Colin,
first.
I thought you were gonna lead, but I'll just say,
I
I have such a
I didn't want to
short
be
answer
rude.
for this one. It's really just being present. And for me, it's a hard one. So I think it's a very important one to just, you have to pay attention to what's going on today so that you can be more effective in the today. And if you're daydreaming about, where, when you're going to be running the show, or you might be missing out on critical pieces of information to actually help you get there. And if you are ruminating on what went wrong yesterday, you're just sabotaging yourself. So I do think that it's important. That's why I like keeping my calendar like, that was yesterday's mistake, I'm not going to make it again tomorrow. And then when it's a brand new day, it's like a whole brand new sheet of paper. It's right there for you to just attack any way that you want to. If it needs to be a rest day, then take a rest day. If you need to, get through 30 things that you're going to cross off a list, then go in with, as much fury as you can bring to it, and then celebrate that at the end of the day. So I can't say enough on how much I think that being present with a million distractions from social media, from your family, from your friends, from your pets, from your life, matters. And then you will be like a better human being for everybody that you engage with, not just at work.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Marilyn. And I think an important part of that for me is being deliberate and decisive about the things that you approach. And for me, that really comes back to what we've already talked a little bit about, but that sense of time management. And it's not only about how do I manage my day to get through what I need to be doing and what I need to accomplish, but how can I use the time that I have in my day to achieve my overall long-term goals? And I think it's really easy, especially as you start to bridge that gap from early career to middle in career, to just kind of get overloaded. People are starting to see that you are, engaged, you're a rising star, and they want you to be involved in things. And that means that people are going to start asking you, hey, do you want to be on this? Do you want to do this group? Do you want to work in this working group? And it's really easy to be like, absolutely, yes, sign me up. Yep, I'm right there. Get me there. And then you realize you have 16 hours of things to do in a day, and they don't all completely relate to your goals. And so I think a big part of time management is being thoughtful about what you should say yes to, being thoughtful about what maybe doesn't fit totally within your goals. And I always lean on, and for myself, a mantra. It's kind of been hard for me to say no sometimes to certain things as I build those boundaries. And a mantra that I have really started to lean on is a thoughtful no is significantly better than a thoughtless yes. And I think that that's true for both the end product. If you're not fully engaged in something, you may not give your best effort to it, but also it's true for you and your own development as well. And I think being really thoughtful about what am I doing today in this moment, as Marilyn said, being present in the now, how does that lead me to and help me accomplish my goals down the future? I'm not solely focused on my goals down the future, but what am I doing today to put me in a better position for tomorrow? And I think that's a really, really important part for me about managing my time and doing so on the long scale, really thoughtfully and deliberately.
I mean, if we can also talk about hard skills as in technical skills, and I will agree with everything that Marilyn and Colin just said. If you were to pick one technical area to develop at an early career stage, I would say Excel. Like Megan had said, in terms of doing her extra courses on that, if you can be an Excel whiz, everybody in your organization is going to want to work with you and know you. And, you know, we do kind of take it for granted sometimes, but if you really, really, really know how to use that program, many people will come to rely on you. That will get you the attention of people more senior in the organization. That will help with your networking and relationship building. Go and learn to do Excel.
Yeah, I think that's a great combination of, you know, hard skills that are more on the kind of internal self-improvement side, working with other people, and then more on the technical, what actual skills, what programs do I need to know, to really put myself out there and get myself noticed. And I use Excel, I feel like every day in my job. So yeah, you can't really live without it. And I agree, the more you know, the more valuable you can be when you're helping other people. And you know, just doing your own work as well, and uh, being more knowledgeable about what you're doing. So yeah, I think those are all great points. Um, so kind of expanding a little bit on that question, in your career progression, what were the skills most valued by those who helped you progress in your professional aspirations? And again, I'm going to send this one to Colin and Megan.
Thanks, Laura. So in thinking about this question, I thought, geez, what are these skills that they value? And I was recently told by a colleague that I very much respect that I am an influencer, and I don't mean a social media influencer, in our business. That's a really lovely compliment. When I set that aside and think about who is it that I am influenced by, and what characteristics do they possess, either within my career or otherwise. For me, to be influenced by somebody, it really comes down to trust and to connection. So the questions that I ask myself, and I'm thinking about this, is, you know, are you someone who does what they say they're going to do? Do you genuinely care about the opinions of others, and do you genuinely want to solve problems? Are you a team player? Basically, all this to say that while my technical knowledge has grown just by virtue of being in these roles over the last 15 plus years, those aren't the attributes that really keep me at the table. How we do our job really matters as much as what we do. Colin?
Well, I would think my first thought, I do have some thoughts about this question, but Chris, I think you had some interesting thoughts about adaptability that really nicely aligned with some of my philosophy that I wanted to build on. So I wondered if you wanted to share your thoughts first, and then I can come on in at the end.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, so this was a tough question. You kind of have to take a step back and look at yourself and look at how you've grown since your career kind of started. And I think mine's a little bit interesting because I was in the sciences for so long and our goals were so different. And then getting into publishing, it was kind of like a big transition. But I think I had a lot of good mentors over there who kind of helped guide me in that, because a lot of the managing editors was the role I went into at the American Chemical Society. Most of them came out of the same background. So they had PhDs, they got out of the sciences, they were looking for alternative careers as scientists. So we had similar personalities in the sense of science, science, science. But once you get into this, you realize that there's so much more to it. I think being adaptable, being willing to listen to other people and understand their viewpoint. Oftentimes we're really quick to respond to a person and it's somewhat emotional, but I think taking a step back and saying, hey, how can I be non-biased, or how can I take the emotion out of this situation? Because there's a lot of tough situations that I'm sure we all encounter every single day in our roles. Also, though, I would say a willingness to help, a willingness to be there when people need you. I find as something that's been critical. Every day we're on Zoom at my society, and there's something that comes up probably every hour, right? So, and then we have the ability to go and we have the ability to help each other. And I think that both of those things are critical in this. So yeah, and I'll hand it over to Colin.
Yeah, and that's, I think, for me, something that really stands out is, and I'm sure everyone on this panel will agree, nobody here said the thing that stands out is perfection. That's the thing that we're looking for. We know that that's not realistic, but I think it's about how do we adapt to the situation? How do we learn from the mistakes that we make and move forward and do better? And I have made some horrible mistakes, some mistakes that definitely keep me up at night. Nobody else remembers them probably, but it's like 11:42 and I remember them, and those mistakes are not the thing that would prevent me from succeeding. I have still been able to succeed while making mistakes that stress me out. It's about how do we respond to those mistakes and how can we be honest with ourselves? And this is a piece that we've talked about a lot, but how can we reflect internally and say, what could I have done better here? Even if somebody doesn't come to you and say, hey, just so you know, you messed this one up. And I think that was a lesson that I had to learn. For a long time, I felt like I was always on thin ice, and this mistake's going to be the one. This is the one that they're going to realize I'm a fraud, and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. As soon as you can learn that that's not the case, and that we're all figuring it out together, and we can just be honest and open with our colleagues about mistakes and challenges that we have, that allows us to be much more adaptable and to solve the problems that come up in that day to day, whether or not we cause them. Sure. But that, I think, mindset is incredibly important for really building strong relationships with your colleagues and becoming a trusted colleague with them as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think especially early career, you feel a little bit more like, if you mess something up, it'll stress you out. You don't really want to talk about it. And seeing, just how valuable it can be to be, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit honest with yourself and your colleagues, and kind of coming into it with this is a place of support. I think people really appreciate that. And it kind of helps knock down the walls of like, oh, I can't admit to this. I have to keep it to myself. And no, really, it helps to let people know when you're struggling because they might be struggling with the same thing. So yeah, I think those are both great points. Thank you both. Okay, so our next question is, in your career progression, what were the skills most valued by those who helped you progress in your professional aspirations? And I'm going to hand this one over to Chris and Megan.
Thanks, Laura. I think we're actually on the next question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And Chris, I just realized I turned it over to Colin when I was meant to turn it over to you. So here we are.
No worries.
Nice day, Colin. And well done, Chris. And there we go. Some imperfection for your Monday, your Wednesday. Don't even know what day it is.
We're giving an example of what we're talking about. Okay, so our actual next question. Has formal or informal mentorship played a substantial role in your professional development and career progression? And we're going to start with Nicola and Chris.
Nicola, do you want to go first? I'll build on it.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, just actually to follow up on what we talked about in the last question, I think if anybody that you work with gives you the impression that they are perfect and have never made a mistake and know how to do everything, you should be a little bit skeptical of that individual. But as far as mentoring goes, I would say I have benefited enormously from mentorship throughout my career. In my early roles at Elsevier and TNF, and when I joined Palgrave Macmillan, I was really lucky to have people around me who I felt were really invested in my progress. And I would say that was more of an informal mentoring arrangement. I think in some cases I had mentors who, or people who I saw as mentors, who I would describe as mentors now, who may not have known that I saw them as mentors, because that was just their authentic communication style, that, you know, they felt invested in my own career progression. They were generous with sharing their experience and their knowledge, and I hope I was sufficiently appreciative of that. So I had informal mentors at various points, particularly in my early career stages, because the idea of asking someone to be a mentor felt quite scary, until I came across the STM mentoring scheme, and I signed up to that scheme about 5 years ago, I think, for the first time, when I was doing my current role. So in my previous role, I used to manage a team. Moved into my current role, I don't manage a team anymore. But I really enjoyed developing people and helping people achieve their career goals. And that's why I signed up to be a mentor. I have really appreciated mentorship from both sides of things. I've been a formal mentor. Hopefully I've been a secret informal mentor to people as well, in the same way that other people have to me. But through my first experience, when I was able to really work with somebody and provide a sort of impartial, away from their organization voice of, I had no investment in their career except them. There wasn't, you know, I didn't have goals for the business that they worked in, that they were trying to hit. All I cared about was helping that individual to progress. And that was so rewarding for me, especially when I did see that person progress. And I really appreciated the course that we were having. And as a consequence, thought, well, I'll sign up again another year, and I'll sign up to be a mentor again, but I'll also sign up for formal mentoring. And there being a vehicle for me to be able to say, can I have a mentor, please, rather than having to approach somebody in a way that continues to feel a little bit intimidating to me, was really great. And my mentor was fantastic, and he was so, like, he was so clear about what he could offer, and that helped me to think back to what I said in answer to the first question, you know, what understanding really what you can offer as an employee, as a mentor in your job role, is such an important aspect of your work life. And so this person, again, who was not connected with my organization and had no investment in anything except to help me personally succeed, was able to see things that I couldn't see. And I've had formal coaching as well provided through my organization, where there was a bit of investment in, you know, they're not going to provide coaching to people unless they think there's going to be an overall benefit to the business. But being able to talk to somebody who might work for your organization, or somebody who doesn't work for your organization, who is genuinely invested in you and helping you to progress without there being any other kind of agenda there, is just one of the most rewarding experiences from both sides of things. If anybody on this call has signed up to the STM scheme as a mentee in the past, and I imagine lots of you will have done, please do think about signing up as a mentor in the future as well, and think about, you know, all the knowledge that you have that other people don't have, and what you could share with other people. And I will hand that over to Chris now.
Yeah, no, this is exciting to hear, because even I learned stuff on these. And I think, as I view the mentor-mentee relationship, it's always been interesting to me, because in the sciences, your PI, so the person whose lab that you're working in, becomes your mentor. So it's a working relationship, but you're at that person's house on the weekends. You're going to dinner certain nights, and they're taking their whole lab out. So I mean, it's a very connected relationship. And I think coming from science, I was also looking for that in my roles. And I didn't find it at first. So then I started looking externally. I think I got to that point where I was able to find people who were able to kind of help and guide me along the scheme. And it was people who I found like in the oddest places. So I mean, I thought that that was really interesting too. I always be on the lookout for people who come into your lives because I think that they can have unique roles. I think I'm really fortunate now. I think myself and several of the other individuals at my level at APS, because I think we have a boss who's also an incredible mentor. So beyond just going through the agenda with us and getting stuff done, she really takes time to work with us individually to refine our skills, to figure out where we want to go to next, to figure out even when there's something personal going on, we can talk about that. So I think if you have a boss who's also can be a mentor, you're in an incredible both because I think it makes my job a lot easier because I feel valued and I feel like what I'm doing makes a difference and I feel like I'm growing at the same time. So I know that not everybody has the opportunity to have that, but I think if you can form that type of relationship, it also helps.
I just wanted to jump in and say that I do think the mentor-mentee relationship is extremely valuable. I've benefited from it. But to go back to something that Megan said about your network, if you know someone like Excel, you do need to know Excel. If you you do need to like do presentations, you do need to learn how to do like pivot tables. Like all these things are really senior leaders all interact with Excel, pivot tables, and they have to present. So if you are not comfortable with those kinds of tasks, working with your peers that excel in them, you know, over lunch, like, hey, I just saw you deliver this incredible presentation, picking their brain on how they prepare or how they get comfortable is also valuable. So when we talk about mentorship, sometimes we forget that there's a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring that happens just when you connect and you say, I really value what you bring to the table. Can you teach me what comes naturally to you or what you do to prepare? And I've benefited from that as well. So sometimes, you just don't have a boss that's willing to share or coach you along or be your advocate because of a lot of different reasons. And the people that are around to help you succeed could be sitting right next to you and you might not be thinking of them that way. Not like in a user kind of like, I'm going to use you and then like, like stab you in the back kind of thing, but like in a, what can I, like be reciprocal about it, if you're willing to have lunch with me on a, every so often, then, maybe you can help me through this challenge that I have and I can help you with something else, that kind of thing.
Marilyn, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I would just continue that thought by saying, to your point, it's not always the senior leadership that is going to be the mentor for you. It could be a colleague that technically is junior to you. If you are working with someone who's possesses a technical skill you want to develop, great. But what about those soft skills? What if they're particularly skilled at communicating or time management, et cetera, things to think about, and really leaning into the network at all levels will only serve you well.
Yeah, I think all of that really kind of calls back to what Colin was saying at the beginning about kind of using your colleagues as, and again, not using in a bad sense, but kind of pulling on the resources of your colleagues to kind of help you improve things that you want to improve on, help you seem smarter, help you feel more prepared. It doesn't always have to be, like you said, a manager. It can be anyone who you feel like you click with, who you think you can learn something from, and who you might want to be able to give back to as well. I think those are all really great points. And then of course, like mentoring schemes like the STM one, that are a little more formalized, where you kind of say, this is what I'm looking for, and you get paired with someone. Those are also really great. Kind of like I participated in the mentoring scheme last year, and it was just really nice. It was almost like a therapy session in a way, where you can kind of like talk about what's going on, get some advice, really kind of get to know some people that you might not have met otherwise, and get different perspectives. So yeah, all great answers. So I don't think we have any questions in the chat right now, and we have a few minutes left. So I think let's just quickly discuss the last question. So now that so many people are working remotely and asynchronously, would you change any of the advice you've been given as an early career professional? And I'm going to send this one to Chris and Megan to start us off.
Yeah, so no, I think this is a great question because so many people are remote now, and the world is also changing dramatically. And I think organizations like Amazon, I saw a couple days ago on the news, they're requiring people to go back in the office 5 days a week. So I think they're struggling to figure out how to address this question. So in terms of what my recommendations are for people in the remote world, keep active, be present, ensure that people know that you're there and that you're doing the work. And I don't think it's, hey, I've got a doctor's appointment, I've got to let everybody know. I think it's get your work done and just be present in the moment. Also, though, I encourage people to chat with colleagues. So if you have the opportunity to meet up with some people from work, if you're still in that area, then I think that's a great thing. I would love to do that. I ended up moving away after our office went remote. So I'm several hundred miles away from the office, but I know people who get together, and I think that's amazing. I try to do it virtually. I try to reach out to people all the time. So I think, and lastly, just being proactive in the projects and opportunities that come up. So that was my advice for this one.
I echo that sentiment. I think staying connected is really critical in this virtual age. It's very easy to get caught up in your day-to-day deliverables and be laser focused on your objectives. But while those things matter, cultivating and nurturing your network is the single best thing you can do for yourself, early or mid-career.
Great. Well, thank you all for volunteering your time today to give us these really valuable insights. I'm gonna pop up a slide here that shows our STM ECPC information. If you're interested in becoming part of the Early Career Professionals Committee, here's some, you can contact Erin Foley or Melody Zhang, and I've also listed the website here. And we're always looking for new people. It's a really great way to kind of get to know colleagues from other publishers, other parts of the industry, and kind of get to lead some things like leading these webinars, working on outreach, things like that that you may not get to do as part of your regular day-to-day. So I highly recommend it to any early career professionals who are interested in getting more involved in the industry. Okay. And that will conclude our presentation for today. Oh, I'm sorry, the slide may not have been visible. And let's see, we have a couple questions as well that it looks like Chris and Nicola have answered. Okay, let me just pop the slide up again. Sorry about that. Okay. Here's that slide with information. Again, Aaron Foley, Melody Zhang, and here's the URL. So yeah, anyone that's interested in joining, please reach out. We're always welcoming new members.
Thank you all so much. It was nice to see everyone.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. This was a
course.
pleasure.
Thank you all. Have a good evening, afternoon, morning. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Laura.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.